Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Purposely. Today, I am super excited to introduce you to Gayle Smerdon. I think I've said her name right. Have I got it
It's
right?
Smerdon. Yep.
Smerdon.
Yeah.
Smerdon. Welcome,
That's it.
Gayle, to Purposely. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Emily. How are you doing?
I'm good. We've just worked out that Gayle actually lives in Ivanhoe, which is where I was living prior to moving here. So very small world. We probably bumped into each other at Ivanhoe
Yes, I'm
supermarket.
sure we've crossed each other's paths walking up the high street.
Yep. So there you go. But I'm so pleased that Gayle's agreed to come on the show. Gayle is a PhD and she has written a book, which we're going to talk about. But before we get into that cool stuff, let's hear a little bit about you, Gayle. So if you were at a dinner party or a barbecue, which is very Australian, and someone said, "G'day, Gayle, nice to meet you. What do you do?" How do you explain to people what you do?
Yeah, well, you have to sort of put a bit of a time frame around it, don't you? Because when you've been around for a while, it could be lots and lots of different things. Um, yes, anything from my misspent youth to what I'm currently doing, which is moving more into speaking and writing and just working with organisations to help them focus on the things that matter, really matter. I'm sort of a bit concerned about how we overwhelm or underwhelm our people at work. And one of the joys I have is helping people really identify what matters to them and getting that done.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll go into that in a minute, but let's hear a little bit about your story because I love hearing people's stories. It's one of my
Okay.
favorite things to do. So let's go
So,
right
yeah.
back to the start and hear the story of Gayle.
The
Like go back.
story of Gayle. Well,
Yep.
I was born in southeast Queensland in a little town called Gympie.
Oh,
Um, yes, and I sort of moved southward for quite a while. So I went to Brisbane for a while and basically worked with a cosmetic company and in pharmacies, and I sort of gravitated towards training because I think really what I wanted to do. At that stage was be a teacher, but I just didn't fancy uni at the time. And so I, did some other things. So I worked for a cosmetic company, and then I decided that I'd come and visit my sister who was living in Melbourne. And I came down to Melbourne and I just fell in love with the place. And also it wasn't quite as humid, and Queensland weather was making me very tired. So I came to Melbourne, and I continued working with the same company in a training position down here, and that was heaps of fun. But then I got a bit of a travel bug, and I just travelled around, working in pubs and clubs and restaurants around London, and travelled around Europe, and sort of did that stuff in my early days. And then I came back and decided, you know what, I'm actually probably ready to go to uni now. So I continued just working part-time, doing things like working in pharmacy and restaurants again. But basically, I was into studying, and I stayed in studying for quite a long time. I found that I really, really loved the intellectual stimulation and just chatting to people about ideas. And I sort of went all the way through and did a PhD in sociology and really studied culture and meaning, which has sort of been helpful for what I do now. But as I was sort of finishing my PhD and looking around for opportunities, I really got an urge to be a little bit more practical around what it was that I was doing. So I wanted to see the ideas applied and how they worked. So I sort of fell into doing learning and development, which was really lucky, I think, because it's moved me more into helping organisations more broadly. And you can really, use some of the thinking around, some great business thinking out there and some great thinking from sociologists that I sort of love to apply as well. So that's sort of how I ended up there. And then you just find little opportunities that pop up, and take them. So I've worked in government and not-for-profit, at universities, doing learning and organisational development there, and lots of different places, some consulting, and then decided that I really wanted to take things to the next level. So about 2.5, 3 years ago, so just a bit before COVID, I decided that I'd go into my own practice. And so just been slowly building up some clients and doing some really interesting work with a few organisations, particularly around values work. But my big passion is really about helping people focus on what really, really matters and getting that done. Yeah. So that's sort of how I've ended up here.
I love
Which is
it.
great.
So, I think for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, can you just talk us through what is sociology? What's the study of sociology?
Okay. So I studied sociology. It's really the study of society. So if you think of psychology as the study of people,
Yep.
individuals, you can think of sociology as the study of society. So it's around groups and how they interact and deal with issues of power and things like that. So it's sort of the next step
Cool.
out. Yeah. So I did do some
Fascinating.
psychology after I finished sociology because I wanted to get that other perspective as well. So I also did a grad dip because one of the constants in my life is that I can't seem to stop learning. Just can't ever give it up.
I
Just
love it.
signed
I
up
love
for a
it.
new program yesterday.
There you go. You're a glutton for punishment.
I know, I love it.
So, what did you do your PhD on? Did you have a particular topic that you wrote your PhD on?
Yeah. So I was really interested in spirituality at the time
Ooh.
because it's a way that you see people creating meaning in their lives, and it really was about how New Age culture is seen in the broader popular culture. And to me, it's like these ideas that we basically call New Age or New Age spirituality. They sort of keep popping up in the broader, more popular culture because we're meaning seeking creatures, and these are just ways that we want to express and understand our world and our lives and what's important to us. So so I studied a few sort of different areas in popular culture where I saw evidence of spirituality popping up like these little mushrooms.
Interesting. It's so fascinating. The topic of sociology. I'm very, very interested in it. I'd be interested in your views of what's going on now in society due to COVID and the culture wars that are upon us. Where I was watching a podcast the other day where a guy, he was a sociologist as well, was talking about there seems to be two camps within this culture war. There's people who are terrified of COVID, who are really pro-vax and pro-lockdowns, and then there's the opposite side of the fence who are anti-lockdowns, anti-vax, and are not scared of COVID. They're more scared of losing their freedoms and what kind of world we're going to be living in, blah, blah, blah. So, and then I was actually watching another guy talk on a podcast talking about how it's kind of quite cultish, some of the things that are going on now. So what's your view on all of that and what's
Ooh.
happening?
Wow, that's a big one. Look, I think we live in a very divided society. I think
Mm,
that there are a lot of pressures from, particularly from media and from the way that politics sets itself up, just from the way our consumerist society sort of sets itself up. I think there are a lot of pressures on people that are sort of forcing them apart, and
mm,
that's sort of quite heartbreaking because we're all better together, and I suppose that's one of one of the bigger outcomes of doing one thing deep is that if you find a common goal, you can work with people that you don't normally agree with. So yeah, so that's one of the sort of big bridging messages from my book, is that we need to find ways to, heal these divisions that we see. And yeah, it's basically stemming from fear and from a separation from
Yes.
each other.
Yes.
And when we can find a way to sort of link together and overcome that, then that's when the magic is going to happen. But at the moment, there are just so many forces that are tearing us apart, and yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It is. It's really sad. I feel like the government and certain political leaders are actually fueling the division through their actions, words,
Mm,
and the fear that they're spreading, which I find really frustrating because I do feel like we live in a world now where you can't have a difference of opinion. There's either black or white. And,
yeah,
um, from all of this work I've done, the study I've done around human behavior, what we know is that the person with the most flexibility controls the system. So if you can be flexible in your thinking, be flexible in the way that you speak, the flexible in the way that you approach everything, you are just going to have a much better uh, outcome, and you're going to enjoy life more. So
hmm
how can people attain that kind of flexibility in your view? And I'd love to hear about your book and your methodology around doing one thing right or deep or whatever it is. So let's go there now, because I think
All
a lot
right.
of people would be really excited to learn some tools around this for right
Okay,
now.
cool. So one of the things I was just reflecting on, though, is that we don't know how to have an argument anymore. We
Mm,
can't separate ourselves and our egos from ideas, and just have a debate around things that actually matter, and not feel hurt and destroyed by the idea that someone has a different opinion to me. I
yes,
think that's
yes.
that's really sad. And,
Why is
and,
that
and
though? Why do you think that is? Why do we live in a world where, like, I find it really frustrating because I love debating things with people. I love talking about ideas. I love talking to people who have a different opinion to me because I learn something
yeah,
every time. But I quite often walk away feeling okay about it. But then other people who were there are really upset because I was
yeah,
having a conflict with someone, and they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
I didn't like that. I didn't think that you should have said
yeah.
that." And I'm like, "But we were just
I
having a
think I
discussion."
think the word that you said there that really peaked for me was, because you learn something. And I think people who are curious and have what, Carol Dweck called a growth mindset, where you're ready to learn and grow, and you sort of want bigger and better challenges, where you come from that perspective, which isn't a point of fear, then, you can have those sort of discussions with people. But if you're in a fixed mindset where there's only limited resources, there's only so much information, you're going to hold on to all of yours, and it's sort of linked to who you are. That I think, that plays a big part in it. Definitely. So for me, the word that popped there was learning. Are you
Mm,
prepared to be curious and learn from other people? Because we know that the best ideas come from diverse thinking. We just know
correct.
that's true. And if we're not prepared to listen to other people, and I don't think we have an education that sort of supports this either. We're
Mm,
sort of streamed quite early and made quite competitive in what we do. Um, so yeah, so that sort of brings me around to talking about do one thing and do it deep. So this is the book, Do One Thing and Do It Deep, and it's really about organizational culture. So it's about how to focus and energize your workplace. And it comes out of the idea for me that, we know that we can't multitask as individuals. We don't do well when we multitask. There are some we can do more than one thing at once. We're just not multitasking. We're task switching, or we're doing things that are so diverse that the brain can actually process them in separate places. So yeah, you can talk to someone and drive your car, as long as it's not a really deep conversation, or you can chew gum and walk, that's fine. But they're processed differently in the brain. Once they get automated into your brain, then you can do some other things as well. But basically, we focus on one thing at a time. And one of the things that I've observed is that organisations aren't very good at this. So there was a moment in my career where I was coming back from a meeting, and I'd just been given a project by my boss. It was another really big OD project. It had sort of come out of the blue. I didn't really understand how it was linking to the strategy that we said we were focusing on for the year. I already had several projects on and was feeling pretty chocker as it was. And I knew that I was going to have to push some of those projects back, and I might lose impetus on the momentum that I built with the stakeholders, and what was it saying to them that this wasn't important. So all that was going through my head, and I was just completely overwhelmed. And I was just standing near my desk, putting my books down and my notes down, and I took a giant breath and I just went, can't we just do one thing? And I had to laugh, because I recalled in that instance that not a block away from where I was, and in my previous job, I'd moved to this role because I'd walk around saying exactly the same thing. Can't we just do one thing? But in that instance, it was for exactly the opposite reason, because I could never get a project implemented. We love talking about them, we love planning them, and then there are always ways not to get them done. They had to go to another stakeholder. There was this other piece of bureaucracy. They'd redone the budget. Let me just think about it for a bit longer. And things were just constantly stalling. And I sort of laughed, because I'm thinking the same thing. So what is this magical one thing I'm talking about? And I was a bit driven to go out and investigate what that might be. So over many more years of experience and talking to people and my own work life experience, I came up with this book for thinking about how organisations can focus the energy of the people that walk in to do their work every day, how they can focus it on one thing. Because when your attention is dispersed in a million different directions, or just stymied and not going anywhere, you're just not getting the best out of your people. So I was sort of keen to think about how this works at an organisational level. So that's really what this book is about. It's about how to navigate the everything workplace and the nothing workplace to find a one thing workplace where you can focus on what matters most to you, where you can feel aligned with what it is that you're doing in the business, and get the most satisfaction, because we all know that we need purpose and meaning in the work that we do, because it's so linked with our identity and our sense of enjoyment.
I love it. You're talking my language, obviously, but I love the premise of do one thing and do it well and do it deep. And I think that you can relate that to an individual as well, because I know so many people who are trying to do 5 billion different things at once. They've got these big goals and they're feeling really overwhelmed. And they don't know what's the one thing that I need to focus on in order for me to progress in my life or career. So what's your advice to people who are feeling like that?
I have this other book
Oh,
that I
there we
wrote
go.
before this one, called I Develop.
Yep.
And this one's actually about your professional development. And it's how to take charge of your professional development by becoming a conscious learner. So we keep coming back to the idea of learning. So it's when you're thinking about what it is that you want to do, you might have lots of ideas about what that is. And I think you probably need a little bit of help to focus that. And sometimes that can be talking to a trusted mentor, or just being a little bit patient with yourself to work that out, asking yourself, what are the most important things that I do? Where do I feel the most alive? And you may not be able to get to that straight away, but you may be able to make some small incremental steps towards it. So, it's not the case of saying that chuck in your job and just follow your passion, because, we have bills to pay, and we have to be a little bit sensible sometimes, and sometimes we don't. But think about your development and things that you want to do, and think about small incremental steps you can take. And when I'm thinking about how you do that, because professional development, we have this idea, particularly, if we work in HR, we have an idea around, learning and development. It's about some courses that we're going to put on and maybe some mentoring or something like that. But, learning just happens in the workplace, and it happens every day. If we're attuned to what's going on and curious, we can just learn so much. I mean, hello, the internet, there is so much knowledge out there. So, take an area that you're interested in to try and progress, even if it's just, a few steps. Take a look at what's out there, what's the information that you can get around this idea. Look at other people who are doing something like that. So look to mentors, speak to people. You'd be surprised how how ready some people are just to have a chat with you about what they do, because a lot of people that they want to help people, get along, particularly if they're interested in a similar area. It's a great way to share information. And that, if you have someone who's a great mentor, they're getting just as much out of it as you are. So, so talk to other people, spend some time reflecting on what it is that you want to do, and then experiment in little ways. So they're the 4 different ways I think about taking on a project, to think about how you want to progress what you want to do. So getting some information, getting some external thinking from people who are already doing it, spending some time really, really digging deep and reflecting, and then also just testing little things out. Try small ways to experiment with what it is that you really want to be doing.
That's great advice. And what I'm taking away from that is the importance of taking ownership of your own development. I find that some young people think that it's their manager's job to create a career plan for them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
see this quite a bit. And,
Yes.
I find that really frustrating, because you as an individual are responsible for your own personal development. You're the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You're accountable to yourself to be curious and have a desire to continually improve and grow and learn. And you need to seek out ways to do that yourself. You can't just sit back and expect that somebody's going to do it for you, or that it's a tick the box exercise. And then once you've done that, you're going to magically get a promotion or get more money.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see that a lot too, not just in young people. People do expect, you to bring whatever it is to them the minute they need it. And it does get a little bit frustrating in working in L&D, because you can't do everything for everyone. We just never have the budgets. We just can't ever do as much as we want to do. So yeah, people need to step up and have some agency over their career and go out and seek things out, and be really, really active about the fact that this is a career that you're building over a long time. And while you might be, happy just here where you are doing this at the moment, don't ever lose sight of the fact that things are changing. So even if you are happy and satisfied with what you do and think this is what I want to do for the rest of your life, this is never going to be the same. This is always going to be changing. You're going to need to make sure that you've got the skills that are going to keep you in the role that you want to be in, or doing whatever it is that you want to be doing. So I agree. Agency is huge. You need to step up and say, this is my responsibility.
Love it. And I think that you hit the nail on the head before when you were talking about the fact that people want purpose and meaning now in their work and their lives and their jobs. That's what they're seeking out. And organizations need to provide a connection to that through whatever their purpose is. So I think that a lot of businesses, especially small businesses out there, they don't really think about this stuff. And it's really important to have a clear idea of well, why are we here? What's our purpose? And if you can't link your employees to that, then they'll probably get disengaged and be thinking, well, I want to go and work somewhere where I feel like I'm making a difference, or I feel like, we're doing good, or whatever it is. And I think that some smaller businesses are probably a bit behind the eight ball with that. So let's talk about what it is that you do and how you help your clients. So do you work specifically with corporates, or is it everyone? Like who do you typically work with?
Most recently, most usually I'm working with government and not-for-profits.
Yep.
So I spend quite a bit of time there and in all sorts of different government sectors. So that's sort of where I am at the moment. But I have some individual people that I coach that come from a lot of different places, and that's something I really, really enjoy, because you get to really see people grow, and there's nothing better than watching someone get a moment, and takes them to the next level, which is never anything to do with me. I'm just there facilitating that, and watching someone grow, or watching organizations get a little bit better at one thing. I'm doing some work at the moment with some groups around their values, which is always such a great piece to do, and can be quite tricky to implement, which is sometimes where I find things fall down. We can create a lovely, lovely set of values. Good, we've done that. Now let's move on. No, we need to implement that, and that's where that's a great opportunity for doing one thing deep. Like if you have a big program that's coming up, then you can run a do one thing deep campaign on that to get everyone on board. Or if you have an engagement survey, which I love taking engagement surveys, looking at the data, finding out what it is that people are saying. And then, from that, you can also think about what's the one thing that we need to do. So you're not overwhelming your people with so much stuff to do, or you're not doing anything and people go, why'd I bother doing that? No point. So I work in all those sorts of spaces, they're fun.
You've just sparked another thought for me. So one of the challenges that organisations are facing at the moment is this return back into the office, and there's a lot of businesses that are just expecting that everyone's just going to come back into the office, and that they're not really giving them a choice, and they're saying, no, we're all going back into the office, bad luck. And then there's others that are doing a hybrid model. What's your advice out there for business owners or managers who are trying to navigate what's upon us?
Yeah. So in Do One Thing and Do It Deep, I talk about the role of the leader as a sponsor. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for leaders to step up and start having those conversations. And when I frame it in the book, I talk about it as the leader needs to be running a political campaign, but in a really good sense, not in a horrible sense. Like there's some great things about campaigning, about making sure that people are, understand your message and you're listening. So when a leader is looking at doing a sponsor's journey, they're deciding that they're all in. Okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it really well. This matters, so I'm in, all in. And the first thing I want to do, it's like in a political campaign, you'll see politicians getting on a big bus and they go out to the electorate and they do a listening tour. I'm not sure what they call it, but anyway, sometimes I think they call it that. But they go out and they listen to people and to what people, what's on their minds, because they need to be relevant. They need to understand what's happening. And from that, you can start to form a message. This is what I think is important. So this is what I'm hearing, and this is what I think we should be doing. And once you form that message, then you as a leader need to make sure that you're acting in the way that aligns with your message, and that you're holding other people to account for aligning with the message as well. And then you've just got to get out and do it. So get out there, talk about it with people, ask them what they think, how's it all working now that we're doing it this way or that way. So you keep engaging. And this is sort of like the grip and grin, when politicians go out and they're meeting people in town halls and talking to them and shaking their hands and
Keeping
getting them
babies.
on board, keeping them engaged with the idea that this is a conversation that we need to have, and then start to recognize and reward things that are going well. And I think that, this conversation about coming back to the office is a magnificent opportunity for leaders to really step up and make sure that they're considering what's going to work best for people and what's going to work best for the business, and always balancing those two things. Because if you don't have a business, no one's going to be employed there. But if you don't have people happy and engaged, you're not going to have the best business you can. So those conversations are really, really critical. And I think leaders need to make sure that they're doing the listening, that they're aligning people, and taking people on a journey. And it's a great opportunity.
I love that. And I think it's so true. It's all about engagement and asking people how they're feeling, what their preference would be, and then coming up with a strategy. Unfortunately, what some businesses are doing is just sending out an email saying, as of this date, we will all be returning to the office, no exceptions.
Yeah.
So even though you've worked from home very, very efficiently and effectively for 2 years, soz, you're coming back into the office, bad luck, and we are not even going to enter into a conversation about whether or not you'd like to do that or not.
Yeah,
So,
and we know what's going to happen there. The eagles are going to fly and the turkeys are going to stay.
correct. So, we talk about in HR, the biggest, catchphrase at the moment is the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
So this concept that people have had 2 years to really assess what's important to them. They've had 2 years to work in a different way that really is a flexible working arrangement that we've talked about having for years, but we've never really had it. It was kind of an oxymoron.
There just isn't an excuse anymore, though, really, is there? There just isn't. There's nowhere to hide. We can work flexibly. We can change fast. We can use technology. There's a lot of things that we learnt we could do, and it's whether or not leaders are feeling courageous enough to actually explore how that might work for them. Yeah.
That's it. I mean, the smart businesses have decided to shut their office, which costs an enormous amount of money and exhausts a huge amount of resources. And they've adopted a hybrid model where people can work from home, and then they have a shared office space where if people want to come in and see other people, then they've got that option. I mean, it's just smart on so many fronts. Like even call center jobs now can be done from home. That we have the technology. So anyway, I'm preaching to the converted here. It sounds.
I think there is something in proximity, and I think being close to people physically. I think there's something in that, but I don't think it has to be all the time and only one way. And I like the idea of teams getting together physically to work on some stuff together when they need to, and not when they don't. So there's sort of no one solution, and anyone who's trying to impose a solution is going to come unstuck, I think.
100%. And I think that what we've learned from working from home is that it stopped a lot of the presenteeism. Like, where you're just sitting at work from 9 till 5 and just sitting at your desk, but you're not actually doing anything because you just have to be present as part of the job. Is if you are not at work from 9 to 5, then you're not working.
Yeah,
and I think
or longer, because you don't want to leave before the boss does.
Yes.
We're not sure how productive people are being. The idea of a results-only work environment has been around for a very, very long time, and it's always quite disconcerting to someone who's been in the business for a while that, these things that seem to make a whole lot of sense aren't really taken off anywhere. So, I just don't think we have any more excuses.
No, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Gayle, if people want to find you and maybe buy your book or reach out to do some work with you, whether it's one-on-one coaching or maybe getting you to come in and do some stuff with their employees, where's the best place to find
Yeah.
you?
So you can contact me on my website, which is gaylesmerdon.com, or just go to LinkedIn. I'm pretty findable there. Just type in my name. There I am. So yeah, very easy to contact me.
Amazing. We will share all of Gayle's information when we publish the episode. But thanks for tuning in, and thank you so much for your wisdom and your time today, Gayle.
Thank you. It's been so much fun. You really make this lovely and easy, Emily. And of course, I love talking about this stuff. Very, very close to my heart. And, keep doing the great work you're doing too. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.